The purpose of the compass, like any directional piece, is to navigate you where you are in the conversation and also to help others navigate where they are in the conversation about race. There are 4 quadrants in the compass: believing, thinking, feeling, and acting. And so there are 3 ways that we really utilize this tool. The first piece is to know where I am on the compass. Where do I find myself in one of these 4 quadrants? And create that self-awareness for me. The second piece is to ask another person in conversation, where are you on the compass? Where are you coming into this conversation about race? And then the third piece is to help one another navigate towards becoming centered, hearing all pieces and components of the compass so that we can work together and really come together in this conversation about race.
The compass is a tool that helps the participant in the conversation to figure out, where am I? And where am I in terms of 4 credible responses to a racialized situation? And then next, how nice it would be if I weren't just in this one place, but I could explore a broader dimension of me. And if, in fact, I'm well in my head and exploring the intellectual realm of this racialized situation, I can see some other ways that I can explore that same issue. The compass helps us to see that we're all multidimensional and that each of us most likely has a strong suit. That is, we like to be a certain way in this conversation. So the compass acknowledges that way, values that way. Wherever you start is perfect. But it also says, there's some other ways, there's some other places that you can go in this conversation. And in doing so, you will also visit some other people who are in those places in the conversation. And as we meet our different parts of self and we meet other people in the conversation, you can already imagine, you can feel, you can know, you can believe, you can think about a more productive conversation about race.
I said that I was in the thinking portion because listening to a lot of the stories that everybody's sharing is really making me reflect on a lot of, things that I've experienced. And the one thing I really shared with her was that in my experience as a teacher, I've had so many people ask me, why are you working with those kids? Are you sure you want to work with those kids? I taught at communities and schools with kids that dropped out of Pittsburgh Public. Oh, you want to work with those kids? They didn't do well in school. I taught at Wesley, mental health, a lot of them. Oh, you want to work with those kids? And now Westinghouse, oh, those kids, and it's constantly that people are saying that, and it just really spoke to me what people were saying about how I feel whenever I hear people call my kids those kids. They're not those kids, they're my kids, and they're who I'm working with every day.
Yes, I very much appreciate that. Thank you, Jess. Thank you for your truth. And you said in the beginning, can you say it again? Where on the compass are you?
Thinking.
Okay.
Well, maybe feeling. I think it started as thinking and progressed into.
How about that? Beautiful self-awareness.
Yeah.
So this is a great example, okay, really, of just how you've modeled for us. Oh, so I started out and I thought I was in thinking. And then I kind of got into what I was saying, and I feel like I'm in feeling. This is the process, right? Because moment to moment, I'm going to shift. I don't stay and think, well, some people do, stay and thinking all the time, but mostly I shift. And a part of this process is recognizing, oh, I've shifted, and where am I? So I'm going to give you a quick example, and I lean on my classroom examples a good bit. So 8th grade, right? They change periods, so I'm getting a new class, and I always greet them at the door. Very important for me to have that kind of eye contact and quick contact with them as they're coming into the room. So they, of course, are standing face forward, shoulder against the locker, just waiting with great enthusiasm to come into my classroom. Can't you just see it? Right, every day this would happen. So I noticed Anwar, who's one of my favorites, and I know as teachers we don't have favorites, but he was one of mine, and I noticed he didn't quite seem himself, right? But you know what? I have 45 minutes, and I worked all weekend on these fabulous lesson plans. I have standards that I have to get them to proficiency on, and by golly, if my administrator comes in and does an informal Observation, I better be on the right page of the scope and sequence. I better have my objectives on the board. Look, I'm ready to go. Where am I on the compass? I am thinking, but I'm acting. I am very much in acting. And so based on what I shared with you about Anwar, where do you think he is on the compass? Feeling. Exactly. And so he stops by to see this lovely girl who he has a crush on, right? And her name is Janine. So what does he do? He stops by and just punches her in the arm. Because you know in middle school, that's a display of affection, right? Okay? So that's the first redirect, and I'm not even a minute into my classroom. So then he continues to walk, and he decides to stop and see his boy Cephas, or let's say Kyle. And he slaps him in the back of the neck, because this is what middle school boys do, among other things. So that's the second redirect in less than a minute. Do you see where this is headed? This is not the outcome I want, and it is my belief that my classroom is my responsibility. My outcomes are my responsibility. So if this kid is not doing what I need him to do, there's something I need to do differently. That's a belief. Okay? And then how do I feel when I come in and my boss is like, chop, chop, let's get to work. We only have 45 minutes, let's get it done. And I'm not feeling well. Or I've had some things going on at home that are just kind of, I'm just not fully here. What do I need? So I'm visiting these different corners of the compass, and by doing that, automatically, I'm not just in acting, right? And that automatically pulls me from acting more towards the center of the compass. Do you see that? Okay, so I've just walked you through how I'm getting centered. And then the fourth and final step is I move towards the other person. So I go to him in feeling. Now, does this mean I fall on the floor and have a tantrum? No. It means I go to him and acknowledge, you know what, sweetheart, I noticed when you came in, you didn't quite see yourself. What's going on? Tell me about that. Well, my brother did this, and my mom got mad about that, and then she got mad at me. And sometimes this would take a minute. Now, sometimes it would take several minutes, and I had to figure out how to make that happen. Okay? But oftentimes, it was just a quick kind of, I see you. I see you. You're important to me. And what I recognized is, yes, I have a lesson plan. But if my kids aren't with me as I do the plan, what's the point? Right? What's the point? They're my agenda. They're my plan. The example that I give oftentimes of my student who was in a feeling space and I was in an acting space, and how we weren't meeting each other. And that led to his lack of engagement in the lesson. So me recognizing I was in acting. So that automatically is me shifting from acting more so into thinking, because I'm reflecting on my practice, what's happening in the moment. I'm recognizing this is not the outcome I want, so I need to do something different. You know, and that shift in and of itself kind of draws me into a more reflective place, and that leads to self-awareness, and quite frankly, in hundreds of teachers that I've observed throughout the country, those teachers who are really, really great at what they do, one common denominator is they are constantly reflecting on their practice. So they are self-aware and able to, with that self-awareness, adjust and get to a different outcome.
For every one of us who has had the joy of supporting student learning, we also know that sometimes that just doesn't feel so right. A child's having a bad day. the question's a little bit too difficult for the teacher at that point. And at that place, it's really important for the teacher in the classroom or the principal in the office to think about, where am I located in this scenario? As the student walks in with a challenge, as I'm trying to address the student learning issue in the classroom, where am I located as the educator, and what part of my response might be missing? And so if I'm located in the emotional place because the student has triggered me, okay, before engaging with the student in that moment, perhaps I will move to the center, which means to move to the intellectual, to the acting, to the believing quadrant, and really examine those other dimensions of self and response.
One example specifically is when I was speaking to a parent, and the conversation just wasn't going the way that I thought it should go, or probably even the way she thought it should go. We were pretty much speaking from two different spaces, and the more that I would speak, she would become more agitated. When I got to where she was as far as in believing, and I start using words like, you know what, I believe in your daughter as well, or I would feel that same way if it were my child, opposed to trying to analyze the situation, which that's what I was doing initially. The conversation was much more effective. We came to a consensus and agreement about how we can effectively service her child and how we can work together.
The Compass is a powerful tool for educators. Educators are able to express where they are in any given moment to their students in the classroom, to their colleagues in a meeting, or in just one-on-one interactions as you're planning the task at hand. And when it comes down to conversations about race, it's critical that you have that self-awareness, because otherwise people are just showing up and people are being labeled as talking too much or feeling too much or acting too much. And when you can actually look at the compass, look at all the 4 quadrants in that compass, we can balance each other out. We have to have our thinkers on our team to really direct our feelings and our actions. We have to have a strong belief in the capability of what our students can do and how educators can transform policy to make sure that we have an action that's very critical to the student's success. So the pieces of the compass do balance each other, and if you can locate yourself as an educator on that compass and hear your colleagues as well, you'll have a more balanced and healthy conversation.